work like all the work I've seen done by you are quite sort of for me it's a blending between like a city planner and sort of planning consultancy nowadays with urban intervention. I just want to see how you distinguish, or do you even think you draw a line between this kind of practice and your kind of conceptual work?
Yeah, I think that design is different from art. I think design is about comfort. It's about trying to, make something easier for someone. It promotes the status quo or the dominant narrative. I think that art should do the opposite. It should challenge. So when people experience it, it connects two parts of their worlds that haven't been connected before, and it forms kind of a question. And they go home then and they talk about it over their dinner table. So I think that, yeah, an urban planner is talking about materials and flow and trying to make a city, work as in like organic, organism. Where I think that art should not be this. I think it should try to open up a space of criticality. You've got to confront yourself. Why hasn't this been done before? What is this about? Why did they do that? How am I now changed because of this new knowledge? So that's a different type to see. And so, yeah, design, I love design, but I'm not a designer. I use design, co-op design, to try to do this thing. And actually, there's this one guy, he's a professor of mine, Krzysztof Wadishko, Polish artist. He termed it interrogative art. No, interrogative design. Design that interrogates. So as you use this design, it actually interrogates or, pries into or looks at your environment. Okay, so this is the easiest way I can understand this, or that it was brought to me. I grew up in America, and I made several works throughout the United States. Then I did one work about kind of about climate change and about methane and about how our waste of our cities is dealt with. I did a project called the Park Spark Project, which basically takes a dog park, and as people go to the dog park, the poop from the dog, they usually take it in a plastic bag and throw it in the garbage. That creates methane, and now we're researching that methane is 30 to 70 times more potent than carbon dioxide as a greenhouse gas. So I wanted to make this knowledge, visible. How do we see this invisible gas? So I made this thing where I put a device, a methane digester, inside the dog park. So when people pick up the dog waste, throw it in there. That project went around the world. That got the most amount of press I've ever had. That was like 75 interviews in 2 weeks. The BBC and CNN and Wired and everything. People call me, hey, I'm in Korea, I just saw you on a bus, or I'm in an elevator in New York City, or I'm in Belgium, you're on TV, or whatever. This was an interesting project because we have a lot of climate skeptics or deniers in the United States, maybe around the world, but definitely the United States. I wanted to bring this concept of climate change into people's houses through their own means. They entered this project through curiosity, and now they're talking about it in their houses. I also did a project in the Netherlands that uses this methane digester to heat water for tea, but I made it as a tea house with no tea. So we had hot water and seats, and then I asked the community, hey, let's go into the environment and find tea. And everybody says, I don't know how to do that. And I said, well, that's the only place we're going to get it. And so slowly someone would say, my grandmother used to drink this stuff. Sting nettle tea, or someone said, down by the river there's some strange plants, or this road used to be called Hops Road. So the project was a framework for a public to come together, understand they're going to get a tea. They're all neighbors, but now they're being asked to use their local knowledge, extracting their local knowledge and working together. And it basically became go for the plants and bring it back and make tea. But the conversation that happened was about the environment, ecology, consumerism, science, public art, community understanding, all these ideas, and I kept it loose. They could talk about whatever. But these two projects, they were successful for their context. But then I was asked to go to Croatia, and I presented these works. And even this idea of urban agriculture, producing food inside the city. This is an interesting idea in America where you have big cities, and kids do not know how food is made. I presented these ideas in Croatia, and they were dealing with heavy unemployment, and this idea of green was not a big deal to them, and usually where these works have, some relevancy, there they did not. And they also have these huge farmers market where all the food, they know where all the food comes from. So the work was dead there. And that's when I realized I'm an American artist. And that kind of made me sad. I was like, wow, my work is for a certain audience. And so I had a choice. Do I make a work that addresses a global theme, or do I make it super local to this unique context of Croatia? And so I chose to do that, and I did it with sheep and this peer and artists, and it was kind of like a curator role. Anyways, my next project out of that, I said, how do you make something more universal? And then I did that house.
Yeah.
And that work, for me, was interesting because one of the first people that wrote about it was a woman in Jakarta. And I was like shocked. I was like, whoa, why is someone writing about it there? And then I think another one in Vietnam. And then it was like, France and South America, and then that one eventually got on CNN too, and some other big, Huffington Post and all this stuff. And it won a lot of architecture awards. But my thought was like, how can these, these communities that I've never been to find relevance? And the woman who wrote about it in Jakarta was not an artist or art writer. She was just a journalist. And she says, this is an interesting idea. This could work in Jakarta. She understood the concept and everything. So then I came up with this idea that because of the internet, you're totally free now. So we know this mantra or this statement, think globally, act locally. It's about sustainability. I shifted it now, act locally, engage globally. You can do a work anywhere in the smallest of little towns. Like when I did that open house, that was only 2,000 people lived in that town. But that work has gone around the world many times. And so I think that we shouldn't be scared to work in any community, because if the work understands its context and makes an intervention, any other place that has a similar context can see the value in that work. And open house has a very simple narrative. It's a public nuisance or a public, a public disaster transformed into a public good, and then it opens up into a community celebration. So the narrative is very clean. So this is where I'm directed now. I don't want to work as an American artist and make work for that context. It's more like, how can we just go into any context, make it explicit, frame the context, and then show our intervention so people have access to both the context and the intervention.